Hey guys, this is a repair video for a Marshall AVT100 valve state amplifier. I've gone ahead and removed the head unit or the amplifier unit from the cab here, and it just comes undone via 4 bolts holding it at the top. You just want to make sure as you're removing those bolts, you've got your hand through the back over here, just sort of bracing it, holding it in place so it doesn't fall off. The actual amp itself, so I've got this out for a couple of reasons. One, you can probably see here that the pot and the stalk that's for the volume channel on the for the volume on the overdrive 2 channels broken off. Now the main reason I've actually pulled this head unit out is because every time I turn this on, there's about a 50% chance that the fan at the back here either gets stuck or it's not running properly. I assume the ball bearings are worn out or wearing out, I don't know. I've gone ahead and ordered some of these parts. I've actually ordered them about 4 years ago. That shows how lazy I am at getting repair jobs done. This is not the exact same model that the stock amp comes with. To be honest, I don't think it really matters, and it's a bit difficult to find the exact supplier that Marshall would have used, or at least it would be cost prohibitive. But I found a similar spec fan. Ordered this off RS Electronics. You can use the code here if you wish to do the same sort of thing. All I got to do is figure out how this plugs in. Might have to get a connector or something, or crimp this into a new connector. I'm not sure. I'll have to see what's going on with that. I also went ahead and ordered the power amp part for this. It's a TDA7293 power amp, which is an SDM part. I didn't really need to do it. Here it is here. It's an SDM part. I didn't really need to, but I've seen online that people have complained that this power amp has died over time. Mine seems to be fine, so I'm not going to change it out of the time being, but I just went ahead and got that part just in case I need to change it down the line. So there's a bit of thermal paste here, as you can see, that they put in. I might just clean it up a bit. Actually, the paste is still quite sticky, so I probably shouldn't have done that. Anyway, so I'm going to leave that there for the time being because mine doesn't seem to have any issues. Also, it's not exactly clear to me how that dismounts. It seems like this PCB unit here is just floating and it's soldered on, so I'd rather not remove that if I don't have to. The final part is the pot for the volume channel. So I went and ordered this. I think it was from a Spanish supply. I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to put the details up in the links. It's a 50K pot, so I have to unsolder the existing one, try and put that in. So we'll video this again as I am working on those individual jobs. Okay, so after having looked at this for the last couple of minutes, trying to figure out what's going on, from what I can gather, the fan, which is right about here, is screwed or bolted into place from behind this plate, or the front of this plate. And you can see that there's 4 nuts on this side. I can't see the actual bolt head, which means it's just here within this cavity. So to access that, I assume I'll have to remove these screws up here, which would then presumably release this bracket or this aluminium sheet here. To do that, I'm actually going to go ahead and just clip this cable tie as well, because that's actually holding the that's securing the power lines for the fan with the lines for the rest of the electronics over here. So just to avoid anything snagging, I'm going to have to cut this cable clip, I think, just to be on the safe side. Now, your amp may look a bit different to this simply because depending on whether you bought it secondhand or if it's had other repair jobs, it's hard to tell exactly what state it is in after a repair, or if the people have meddled with it. But as far as I'm aware, this is a stock amp when I bought it, and I believe this is how it would have looked coming out of the factory. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we'll see what's up next. Okay, so I've gone ahead and clipped that cable tie, which was securing the fan lines with some other cable. So I've gone and clipped that, and this comes out pretty easily. You don't need to pull it, and it doesn't seem to be a release clip or a latch. It just sort of came out pretty easily. But if yours is a bit hard to remove, just probably sort of wiggle it side to side. This clip over here does have a release or a latch mechanism, so you just push that in and unclip it. This cable connector here was a bit tricky. That sort of refused to budge. I had to sort of move it a bit from side to side, and you got to be careful because this PCB where the power amps soldered into is sort of free floating, and it's only sort of held by the screw that the power amps mounted onto. So you want to be careful removing this one, but it does come out. Okay, so the next step was to remove this aluminium bracket here that the power amplifier is bolted onto. And it's actually held in place with 3 screws on the main chassis. And I actually had a few issues getting this out because the M3 by 10 millimeter bolts that screws that's holding it in place, you can probably see from the top of the head here that it's stripped a bit, and the metal is quite soft. So these two, the center and the right one, actually came out fairly easily. I had to put a bit of downward pressure for the screwdriver to grip. But the leftmost one here, I did have a problem. The head did strip, despite me trying several different types of screw heads. And I had to go ahead and use this screw bolt extractor. I thought I was going to lose my entire weekend trying to get this out, but the metal of the bolt head is actually so soft that this just dug straight in and gripped, and it came out in like less than 2 seconds. So I think if you're going to go ahead and remove these, you should probably replace them with a fresh set. I'm going to go and try and put a hex head into these. I'm not sure if it'll actually clear, if there'll be enough clearance when this goes in to the enclosure, but if the hex head doesn't fit, I'm going to just put a fresh set of screws, probably with something where the metal's a bit harder, so it's not going to strip again. Okay, so now that bracket's out, one thing that's probably worth having a quick look is to just inspect all the capacitors to make sure that they're not bulging or damaged. Have a quick look at the PCB, make sure there's no burn marks or anything else that looks suspicious. There's the 12AX7 valve, preamp valve. Won't need to replace that. That seems to be fine. One thing I was surprised about is how clean this was inside. Despite its age, there's very little dust accumulation. So the enclosure is actually pretty good at keeping dust out. Okay, so I've gone ahead and removed the fan, which was held in place with 4 bolts. And so there it is. So model number is DF2404SH by Top Motor, made by Dynian Industrial. It's rated at 24 volts, 80 milliamps. Now the replacement part I have is 24 volts as well, but except it's 90 milliamps. I'm not sure under what conditions those are measured. I believe they're peak. I'm not sure if that's peak at steady state when it's operating, or if it's a peak at the inrush current when it's first turned on. I'm not too sure, but I've seen alternatives recommended online, which are by brands such as Orion Motors, and they've been up to 100 milliamps. I'm not entirely too sure what that means in terms of the impact for the other parts that this is drawing current from. Hoping it won't make too much of a difference. 90 milliamps should be okay, especially if it's an inrush current as opposed to operational. the Orion branded motor, which is not these, I should say, that's recommended online, is actually quieter, 20 decibels. This one's, I believe, 33 decibels I saw on the data sheet, so it's a bit noisier, but given that the ball bearings in this are worn out, this is definitely making a bit of a racket at the moment, so this is going to be quiet at least for now. I've also seen people recommend that you can remove the sticker and put some lubricating oil in there, but then again, I'm not sure how long that's going to last, especially if you're going to be opening and closing this and you get dust in there. That's not going to help long-term durability. This doesn't come with a connector end. There's just the tinned lead. So what I'm going to probably do is, so this is the original connector. I'm not sure what brand that is, and I really can't be bothered trying to find out that info. You'll also have to, probably get, crimp that with the proper end connectors. So what I'm probably going to do is, what I am going to do is I'm just going to cut this lead somewhere, probably there, and then solder that onto the ends of this. That's just going to make my life a whole lot easier. So we've installed the new fan in place, pretty straightforward. I've cut the old connector off the old fan, and I've wrapped those leads around the leads of the new fan, soldered them into place. Remember to use some flux and solder them in well and tape the ends once you're done. So the next step after installing the fan into its mount is to sort out the volume knob. I won't put the fan mount back into the main chassis because I need to fix that volume knob, as you remember. So the next thing I did was remove this vertical aluminium sheet. So this is fixed right here. You can see 2 screw holes, and I think the purpose of this is to separate the wires without having them snag, but I'm not entirely too sure. I also put a bit of tape in one end because I noticed this main power line was snagging on it. And also, before you disconnect the front PCB panel, you need to remove all of the control knobs. And you need to carefully do that without breaking a pot, or you're going to end up having to replace more than one. So there's a fair few of them. They do come out, but just take your time and slowly ease it out. To actually once you have that done, to actually remove this PCB panel is not particularly easy. So they're held in place by these metal mounts, as you can see on the front panel, PCB studs or PCB metal mounts. So there's 8 of them across the front panel, and you've got to slowly work left to right over and over again, slowly easing the panel out. Top to bottom. Don't apply too much pressure on one end. So you got to slowly work your way across the board, and it will eventually come out. Don't use any sort of metal tools or pliers because you risk, cutting into the PCB trace or damaging it. If it doesn't move too much, if you can't see it moving too much from one end, move across to the other side and try from there. If it's still not coming out, you might have to apply some sort of electronic safe lubricant to get it out. The key thing is to take your time and slowly ease it out. I emphasize, do not apply too much pressure as you're doing it, because you could potentially crack the PCB. Another step before you finally remove it is to label these IDE connectors, IDE style connectors. So I basically went ahead and labeled them according to its PCB designations. As you can see, there's a connector here called CNF8. So I labeled that CNF8, the CNF7, the CNF5. There's also a central connector here. It's the only one of its style, so I didn't feel the need to label it. There's 2 other connectors at the side. There's CNF3 and CNF4. They sort of sit top and bottom, CNF4, CNF3. So go ahead and label those as well, because you don't want to accidentally connect it to the wrong one. Now, the next thing we want to do is identify what we're working with. So I happen to have these PCB clamp mounts. Unfortunately, the length of this PCB board is longer than what these mounts support. So I've just sort of had to do the best I could. I've disconnected it and mounted it this way. It's not the most stable, so you want to be careful if you do something like this. But unfortunately, I don't want to put pressure because we've got to work from the underside, remember. So I don't want to put pressure on the pots this way, otherwise I'll end up replacing one or more. So as you can see, that's the broken pot here. So I got to flip this around and try and desolder this one. So that's what I'm going to do next. Okay then, so I've gone ahead and desoldered this pot, and here it is, the broken stock. So I used a temperature of about 340 for the signal pins. Let me try and point that out. 340 degrees Celsius. Didn't need much more than that. For the actual mount pins, I used 370 degrees. This is all Celsius, by the way. And that seemed to do the job. So here it is with the broken stock, and you can see it's a 50K pot. Here's the one we're going to install. It's also a 50K pot. Slightly different style. I have no idea if these are the same manufacturers or not. It's a slightly different green, but as long as the output's similar, that's all we care about. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so the new pot's soldered in, and oh, where is it? My work's that good that I can't even find it. No, it's right here. It's a bit of residue. So hopefully this is firmly in place now. I had to sort of push back underneath from here a bit as I soldered it in, just to make sure it didn't wobble or anything like that. Remember to use plenty of flux as you are both desoldering and resoldering this, and then do a bit of cleanup with PCB safe cleaner, some form of isopropyl alcohol that's safe for PCBs. Clean up all the flux and then inspect all the joints again, just to make sure everything's soldered in place properly. So I'm just gonna, I need a third hand here, so unmount this from my makeshift holder, and we can see, so the new one is the one that's doesn't have all that grime and muck all over it. It's also a slightly different green from what you can see compared to the rest, but I'll give this a bit of a cleanup and then start the installation process. Okay, so I've given it a quick clean. Look, this is not going to be perfectly clean like it was brand new, but and you certainly don't want to break another pot stock whilst you're cleaning it. Well, I certainly don't, because I don't have any spares. Now's a good time to just have a quick look at all the caps, make sure everything's in order, nothing bulging. So that looks fairly good to me, so I'm going to start putting that back in finally. Okay then, so the front PCB panel's back in, and I've put all the connections back in as well. So you want to make sure you put the connectors in first before slotting the PCB panel back in place. I did have a slight hiccup with this. So as I went to put this back in, I realized that the new volume pot that I installed was slightly misaligned. And the problem with being even slightly misaligned with this is, it's a bit hard to demonstrate, but the actual hole or the cavity that the stalk comes out of is very small. There's almost no tolerance for any misalignment. So what I had to do was just sort of hold the soldering iron again over some of the joints and sort of tweak it back to where I was able to get it back into perfect alignment. Not the biggest of issues, but that's probably something you want to just watch out as you're attempting this as well. Perhaps I should have paid a bit more attention the first time, but anyway, that's sorted out. Okay, so now everything should be back in. Put in the vertical plate, and also put the fan and power amplifier mount back in. It's probably not necessary, but I went and taped these ends of the mount here just because the cables were rubbing up against it. Previously, I think the fan power cable was cable tied along with these. I didn't really feel the need to do that. I just sort of looped that in here and put its own little cable tie over here. Again, I've put a bit of tape at the bottom just to prevent any sort of chafing in the future. Look, it's probably not strictly necessary because, you know, it's not a moving part as such, but anyway, it's better there than not. So now the next step is to just ensure everything's connected back in correctly. So the cable's here, all our connections elsewhere that I unplugged, I put them back in. I had to remove the 12AX7 valve earlier just as I was removing some stuff, so I'll put that back in, and then I think the next step is to put it into the amp and see what happens. Just a quick note about these, so I replaced those countersunk style screws with these hex head M3 bolts. It's the same length and gauge, but just the top's different. I'm not sure how well or not this will clear when I finally put this back into the cab. I'm feeling the clearance is going to be a bit tight, but we'll find out and see. Okay, so I've tentatively put this back into place. I haven't bolted it on yet to the cab. I've just connected up the loudspeaker. You want to make sure you connect that load back in, connect it to mains, and the first thing we want to do is make sure that this fan's running. Don't forget that, or you're going to possibly fry your power amp. So I'm going to turn this on. There we go, the fan's running. And that is so much quieter than the old fan that I had, which goes to show that was just worn out and steadily getting worse. Yep, so I can feel some airflow. I think it's more airflow being pulled in rather than out, I think, but that's definitely running. So the next thing we want to do is just sort of quickly check the electronics at the front here. So yep, that's powered on. I don't have the knobs back in place yet, but I will put that back in. So put this down a bit. OD1, OD2 is working, clean channel's working. Let's put up the gain a bit there. Don't actually know what I'm setting this to, but oh well. Okay, let's make sure that the clean channel's working. Yep, that's working, and that was quite loud. OD1's working. Alright, now the moment of truth for overdrive 2. Okay, let's put the gain up a bit. Oops, wrong way. And let's put the volume up. There we go. Cool, I'm happy with that. So the next step is to actually secure this into place properly and do a final check and enjoy. Okay, so everything's now back in place and connected up and good to go. I did have one more hiccup, as you can expect with this sort of thing. So it turns out that all of these aren't actually interchangeable. So they seem to have some sort of number underneath of the knob. Could be related to what channel it is. I was trying to look in the manual to see if that could tell me something, but they basically got numbers from like 1 to 13. Some of the numbers are doubled up, but basically what that means is when you put everything to a complete anti-clockwise direction and try and put it in, so the markers don't necessarily line up with the level 0, for example. So it was sort of mix and matching, and trying to play a guessing game as to which one's what. Most of them slot the same way, but not all of them do. One notable one is this program channel, which is actually a metal stock pot. It's a different sort of pot because it clicks into place, unlike the other ones. So this one's actually out. I'll have to sort that one out later, which shouldn't be too complex, which means that one of these was originally the one for that. So yeah, it's all a bit confusing, but for the most part everything else is fine. You just have to be really careful, obviously, removing them. Some of them come out easier than others. Not sure why that's the case. Could be that the tolerances over time, just things are worn out or whatever. So this one's not coming out very easily, but I don't want to break this or another pot, so I'm gonna take my time and do that one later. It's not really a big deal, but for now, everything's working, and I'm pretty happy with the outcome.